Melbourne Towers lockdown breached human rights. About 3,000 people were confined, under police guard, to their public housing units from 4 July for up to 2 weeks, after a state government order. The residents were given no notice, meaning many people were left without food or medicine, the Ombudsman found. The Victorian government denies that the detention broke human rights laws. The Victorian Ombudsman, who has no legal power but is the official investigator into government complaints, called on the government to apologise to residents for the harm and distress caused by the immediacy of their lockdown. In early July, a second wave of coronavirus was just beginning in Melbourne and authorities were scrambling to locate cases and stop the spread. On 4th of July, health officials recommended an intervention, with a lockdown to begin on 5th of July, to allow planning for food supplies and logistics. Dozens of police officers were at the housing estate towers shortly after. Most of the residents found out about it when they saw uniformed police officers surrounding their homes, Ombudsman Deborah Glass said. In her report, she found the snap imposition of the lockdown was a decision made by the state government, and not based on health advice. The state's acting chief health officer was given only 15 minutes to assess the human rights implications of the order. The towers lockdown saw Australia's most strict coronavirus restrictions. Confinement lasted 5 days for most residents, but 14 days for those in the worst affected tower. Residents, at that tower, waited more than a week to be allowed outside under supervision for fresh air, said Ms. Glass. We had to act immediately because of the viciousness of the virus, said Mr. Wynne. He said authorities had acted in line with human rights law for the entire process. However, Ms. Glass said that the rushed lockdown was not compatible with the residents' human rights, including the right to inhumane treatment when deprived of liberty, and appeared to contravene Victoria's Human Rights Charter. At the time, residents, many of whom were refugees or migrants from non-English speaking communities, told the BBC they were angered by the sudden and harsh restrictions which they said discriminated against them. Ms. Glass found it was discriminatory, saying government documents had suggested the estates were a hotbed of criminality and non-compliance. But the evidence was the vast majority were law-abiding people, just like other Australians, she said. She said it was unimaginable that the theatre of policing which followed would have occurred for a similar COVID outbreak in a luxury apartment block. Ms. Glass acknowledged the lockdown had worked to contain the outbreak, but a proper consideration of human rights would have put health, not security, front and center. In a just society, human rights are not a convention to be ignored during a crisis, but a framework for how we will treat and be treated as the crisis unfolds, she said. Just days after the tower lockdowns, the entire city of Melbourne was ordered into lockdown to combat the wider outbreak which was fueling over 100 cases per day. The citywide lockdown began on 9th of July and lasted 112 days. For most of this time, residents faced a nightly curfew and stay-at-home orders, but unlike for the tower residents, there were permitted reasons for leaving home. As the virus spread outside the city, stay-at-home restrictions were also imposed on the rest of the state. The heavily policed lockdown, one of the toughest in the world, divided opinion among the city's residents and prompted small protests. Melbourne Towers lockdown breached human rights. Korean Lantern Festival gets UNESCO honours. COVID, Melbourne Towers lockdown breached human rights '6. Love jihad, what a reported miscarriage says about India's anti-conversion law 9.